Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen. Allahumma alimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na bima tu'allimuna wa zidna bifadlika ilman wa ta'liman innaka ala kulli shay'in qadir. So this book is one of my most favorite books because it tells you things that are not clear. What does that mean? It means there are certain things that are very clear, like there's a Quran, there's Hadith, but there's a lot of things happening behind these things that help us understand what's going on, right? Particularly for a Hanafi or a Maliki, but in reality for anybody. So I remember many years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I was teaching a text called Matan Abi Shuja', which is a primer in Shafi fiqh. And I'm not trying to bring proofs for people, but trying to give context. So, where does this ruling come from, right? Proofs are a complex thing, but context is something else, right? And I found myself time and time again coming back to the Muwatta of Imam Malik. That basically the Shafi school, even though it is not the Maliki school, and even though it's a school that prides itself on being based on Hadith, it goes time and time again back to the fiqh of the Salaf. So there's this major missing thing that when people talk about halal and haram, which is fiqh of the Salaf. So there's an ayah and there's a hadith. Arguably more important than both is how did the Sahaba and Tabi'een read that hadith and read that ayah? Arguably, you can say that it is more important to know how the early Muslims looked at revelation than revelation itself, right? And I'm saying quite big things. They might make sense, might not make sense. And so why is this book important then? Number one, the Muwatta of Imam Muhammad of Imam Malik has a lot of key hadith and key fatwa from Sahaba and Tabi'een in Medina. So that helps us get a picture of what's going on. Okay? And then we have with this hadith, this book, the Muwatta, being narrated by Imam Muhammad, who is the student of Imam Abu Hanifa, who's coming from Kufa, a totally different school of fiqh. We see this clash. And so we see that wherever there's a difference of ways of how the early Muslims understood the Quran and Sunnah, we see these things coming up, generally speaking, in this book. So number one, it is useful because it gives you that insight into the fiqh of the Salaf. How did the Salaf understand things? Number two, you see that difference of agreement, the key difference of agreement, not all of it, but the key difference of agreement. Number three, you realize how essential this is to forming of the madhhab. Right. So if I can just summarize, I'm sure Muhammad's seen this many times, but we'll say it. People understand that people often don't understand where these things come from. Right. But if you can roughly summarize, right, some roughly speaking, three schools of fiqh. Medinan, from Medina, Meccan, and Kufan. You could also add Basran, Damascus, Egyptian, but these are the main schools. Okay, these are the main schools of fiqh. Okay, so each group has certain ahadith that they narrate, certain fatwa that they spread, and concepts and ideas that they share. Okay, and from this we get the Hanafi school. So Imam Abu Hanifa is an organizer and a representative of the Kufan fiqh. Right, and we see that very clearly in this book. Imam Muhammad's going to refer to, say, this is the position of Imam Abu Hanifa, وَالْعَامَةِ مِنْ فُقَهَاءِ مِنَ الْفُقَهَاءِ قِبْلَنَا. Right, and this is the majority of the scholars in our direction, i.e. in Kufa. right? So Hanafi fiqh is not based on Imam Abu Hanifa. It's based on the Kufans, group of people, group of scholars. So Hanafi fiqh neither began with Imam Abu Hanifa nor did it end with Imam Abu Hanifa. So Imam Abu Hanifa is a key person in that process of organizing and editing and comparing and questioning Kufan fiqh. He studies with people from Mecca, he studies with people from Medina, but ultimately he's a Kufan. Right? Then we have Medinan fiqh, which creates the Maliki school. So Imam Malik is he's not the one who built the Maliki school. He is not the first Maliki, nor is he the last Maliki. But rather he is a part of a system which represents the Medinan school. The Maliki school began before Imam Malik and continued on after him. Again, fundamental people think Imam Hanafi, Imam Abu Hanifa. Maliki, Imam Malik. That's wrong. That's wrong. Right? Maliki is a label that we use to do with Imam Malik because Imam Malik was the most important person in that process. Right? But it's not Maliki from Imam Malik. So Maliki fiqh precedes Imam. So you're going to see, for example, how many times key fatwa from the early Kufans, 2 generations before Imam Abu Hanifa, and that's the fatwa in the Hanafi school. Or the same thing with the Maliki school. So the Maliki school began before Imam Malik, and it continued on after him. We don't necessarily always agree with Imam Malik. Okay. Now, what happened with the Medinan school, with the Meccan school? It died out. There was no key person who did that with the Meccan school. Now, the Meccan school feeds into these madhhab, right? It feeds in. So again, I mentioned Imam Abu Hanifa studying with Meccans. People are familiar, they go on Hajj, etc. They're familiar with these things, but it didn't really build it. So what we see then is with this process, Hanafi, not Hanifi, with this process and that conflict which happens. So there's 2 kind of key books where you see that key conflict, right? Number 1, this book here. And number 2, another book of Imam Muhammad, which is Al-Hujjah ala Ahl Medina, which is really a proper challenge. Whereas where the Medina's wrong and the Kufan's right. Right? But you see basically the 2 most important centers of fiqh, here and here, and where they differ in this book. That's pretty important. And it shapes our understanding of what is a madhhab. Right? What is a madhhab? Madhhab is not a sect. A madhhab is not a recording of one particular imam or the opinions of one particular imam, but it is a process, right? Now, from this, from the Medinan school, you get the Shafi'i and Hanbali schools. So they draw on the Kufans and they draw on the Meccans, but they're essentially Medina in their structure, right? So Imam Ahmad's not even from Medina. Imam Shafi'i's not from Medina either. Imam Shafi'i's from Mecca originally, but they built on that same structure. So therefore you can have kind of like 2 large groups, the Kufan group and the Medinan group, right? And to say Shafi is Medinan, there's some fundamental problems there because Imam Shafi doesn't believe in in that anyway. But there's lots of things, lots of DNA you can say in the Shafi school and in the Hanbali school that goes back to the Medinan school, right? So for example, the concept of how the prayer times work, many concepts, key concepts, they go back to Medinan school. So that's one of these reasons why this book is so important. So should I study Sahih Bukhari or should I study the Muwatta of Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Muhammad? This is more useful. I'm not saying Sahih Bukhari is not useful, but Sahih Bukhari is a hadith is like saying, I want to find out, I want to compare, I want to see and compare the relative usages of internal combustion engine versus an electric engine. I want to see where it kind of compares, like the fundamentals. Okay, whereas Bukhari is Formula One racing cars that use internal combustion engine. So Sahih Bukhari is useful with if you want to see the best possible internal combustion engine cars ever. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in, I want to understand the fundamentals of an internal combustion engine, how energy is used there versus and transfer of energy and conservation of energy versus, you know, modern electric cars. And I want to know that difference. That's a big difference, fundamental difference, right? Really big fundamental difference as opposed to understanding super amazing fast cars, right? Does that make some sense, inshallah? Albeit
Yes.
not all discussions are mentioned, and albeit some things are kind of vague. So really, this book should be taught by somebody who is a Maliki, a Shafi'i, and a Hanafi, and I'm not. So it's kind of hard to do that. But you get a good idea, that you get some idea. Okay. Okay. So then he has a whole, you know, and so Aisha Bewley, no, she translated this one. Who translated this one? It's not Aisha Bewley, but the Muwatta of Imam Malik is translated by Aisha Bewley, and it's translated, it says something like the first formation of fiqh. Like the first example we ever see of a complete fiqh book is the Muwatta of Imam Malik. So if that's the first formation, this is the first critique of that first formation. That's why it's so important. And this structure of this book shapes the 6 books. Right? So you have to understand that hadiths do not shape themselves. The way that you're going to organize a hadith book is not organized based on how the Prophet spoke in chronological order, but rather on concepts. And so you have to have fiqh before you can write a hadith book. Okay, where does that even come from then? Where does fiqh come from? Fiqh doesn't come from the hadith. It comes from the fuqaha, like these people. Right? Imam Ahmad was asked, where did you get all these subtle points in fiqh? He said, from the books of Imam Muhammad. Okay, so that's one of these reasons why this book is so important. So in Ramadan, we went through the chapter on Ramadan, but we're going to just jump to the prayer, inshallah ta'ala. There's a whole introduction here that's very important. You can read it, but I'm not going to go into it. So it says, first contention. Right, so here he's going to mention, for us, it's interesting to say, yeah, when do you pray actually, by the way? I like to tell me what a hadith about when you pray, right? And so in reality, what he's going to do, he's going to mention first contention, which is prayer times. So when do I pray Fajr? When do I pray? When do I pray Asr? So it says, قال محمد بن حسن أخبرنا مالك بن أنس عن يزيد بن زياد مولى بني هاشم عن عبد الله بن رافع مولى أم سلمة رضي الله عنها زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن أبي هريرة أنه سأله عن وقت الصلاة فقال أبو هريرة أنا أخبرك. So this hadith in reality is mawquf, is a hadith that is quoting Abu Hurairah. Right? So this again, the importance of how the Sahaba themselves understood the deen as opposed to just reading the hadith. So it says Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, the student of Imam Abu Hanifa, he went to Imam Malik, and Imam Malik informed us, I was with other people, from Yazid ibn Ziyad, who was a freed slave of the tribe of Bani Hashim, that Abdullah ibn Rafi', the freed slave of Salama, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, asked Abu Hurairah about the times of prayer. And Abu Hurairah said, I will tell you. Pray Dhuhr when the length of your shadow is equal to your height, i.e. up until that point. And Asr when your shadow is twice your height. Maghrib when the sun has set. Isha from then until the passing of 1/3 of the night. And should you sleep until the passing of the half the night, then let your eyes not sleep, and pray subh in darkness. Okay, so here there is two rebuttals. Okay, two rebuttals against the Kufans. The Kufans are praying Asr late, and they're praying Fajr late. So here he's saying, I have come from one school of fiqh in one physical place to another place where there's another school of fiqh. And here they're saying something different. And they're quoting Imam Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu saying, pray dhuhr when your shadow is equal to your height. Right? And so we all agree you don't pray starting you don't start, dhuhr doesn't start when the shadow is the same length as you. Rather when it's straight after the zawal, straight after afternoon, right? When there is a tiny shadow. So what it means is pray dhuhr up until that point. Pray dhuhr up until that point. When your shadow, so up until one length, okay? And then pray asr up until two length. So what this is saying is the Hanafi time is in reality the end of asr time. So when Hanafi say, let's go and pray asr now, it's now asr time, that is now the end of asr time in reality. Or at least the preferred time for asr time. Then mukhtar time is now finished. Right? You're not doing the good time. You're praying at a later time. And so now when it is twice the height, it is now waqt al-jawaz, it's now permissible time, but it's not the good time to pray. Right? And pray maghrib when the sun has set. We all agree on that. And pray isha from then until a passing of 1/3 of the night. Right? And pray subh, pray the fajr prayer in darkness, i.e. don't wait till it's light outside. Okay? So again, for the Hanafis, they pray asr later than everybody else. And for and they pray fajr later when it's light outside and not when it is dark outside. قال محمد هذا قول أبي حنيفة رحمه الله في وقت العصر وكان يرى الإسفار في الفجر وأما في قولنا فإنا نقول إذا زال الظل عن المثل فصار مثل الشيء وزيادة من حين زالت الشمس وقد دخل وقت العصر وأما أبو حنيفة فإنه قال لا يدخل وقت العصر حتى يصير الظل مثليه. Right? So again, when we say the Hanafi school is Imam Abu Hanifa, wrong. Because here his student is disagreeing with him. So it says, Muhammad said, this was the verdict of Imam Abu Hanifa. May Allah have mercy on him concerning that time of Asr. And he used to consider the time that the dawn glowed clear as Fajr. Right? He used to say you should delay Fajr until it is light outside. As for our verdict, i.e. Imam Muhammad disagrees with Imam Abu Hanifa, and so nobody is blindly following anybody. That's not what happened. We say, so why then in the Hanafi school, what happened then? So Imam Abu Hanifa said one thing, Imam Muhammad said something else. So what happened then? So then the scholars did not blindly follow Imam Abu Hanifa, nor did they blindly follow Imam Muhammad, but they looked at the evidence and they said, Imam Muhammad, you're wrong, Imam Abu Hanifa, you're right. That's what happened. They didn't just say, well, there's two positions. They looked at the evidence and they agreed, the Hanafis agreed with Imam Abu Hanifa. So the idea then, again, that the Hanafi fiqh is just what Imam Abu Hanifa said, that's wrong. Okay? That's wrong. So Imam al-Tahawi, he's going to agree or disagree. Jassas, agree or disagree. So it is not an issue of pure taqleed. He said it, therefore it's true. But rather he said it, it makes sense and it's true. وافق اجتهادهم اجتهاده. Their ijtihad agreed with his. Right? Otherwise, how would you find out what is a school? How does it work? Is it every single thing in the Hanafi school is the position of Imam Abu Hanifa? No. Okay, so then how did you work that out then? You had to do ijtihad. So ijtihad did not end with Imam Abu Hanifa or Imam Muhammad, or it didn't end. Right? It's a single process. So a madhhab is a large body of people working with one system to come to conclusions. Right? Generally speaking, because they have the same system, they're gonna agree, but they don't always agree. And they don't always agree. As for our verdict, we say that when the shadow of an object has grown longer than the object, and therefore has arrived at and exceeded the length of the object as the sun moved beyond its zenith, so i.e. the minimum shadow plus its length, and then plus a little bit. Now it's our Asr. There's the time for Asr. This is the position of the Jumhur, the Shafi'is, Hanafis, and Hanbalis and Malikis. As for Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, he said that the Asr time does not arrive until the shadow of an object becomes twice its length. Right. So again, you're going to find other evidence from the Sahaba and Tabi'in for that. So again, Imam Abu Hanifa, what is he doing? Is he's weighing up the positions of the Sahaba and Tabi'in. He is neither creating fiqh, right? He's neither the beginning of fiqh, nor is he the end of it. أخبرنا مالك أخبرني ابن شهاب الزهري عن عروة قال حدثتني عائشة رضي الله عنها أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يصلي العصر والشمس في حجرتها قبل أن تظهر. So Malik narrated from Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, the great muhaddith, the great faqih, and the great Sahib al-Maghazi, right? So a lot of seerah comes from Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri. Informed us that Urwa said, Aisha narrated to me that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu used to pray Asr when the sun was shining into her room before it had itself become visible, because it was still high in the sky. Right, so this hadith in reality is a bit confusing. There's different explanations of it. But if you can imagine the sun coming down into a narrow space, i.e. the point is it's still high and it's not low. Right? I.e. he used to pray Asr early, not pray Asr late. And we will note here the role of Aisha. Okay? Aisha is very important in the Maliki school. Why? Because she's in Medina. So we're going to find Aisha. She is one of the key building blocks of the Shafi'i of the Maliki school. What was she? Was Maliki? How is she Maliki? Imam Malik doesn't exist yet. She's part of that process that we label as the Maliki school. Right? Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, very important. Right? Urwa ibn Zubayr. Right? The brother of Abdullah ibn Zubayr, the son of Zubayr ibn Awam. Right? The son of Asma bint Abi Bakr. Right? And so these are key builders of the Medinan school. Right? Whereas the Kufans, they have different imams. Right? They have people like Sayyidina Ali, they have people like Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, right? Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, al-Aswad. Okay. أخبرنا مالك قال أخبرني ابن شهاب الزهري عن أنس بن مالك. So Anas was in different places. So here he's not actually in Medina. He's not actually in Medina. Zuhri narrates from him in Damascus. So he was in Basra, so you find a lot of Basrans narrating from him. He's also in Damascus. قال كنا نصلي العصر ثم يذهب الذاهب إلى قباء فيأتيهم والشمس مرتفعة. So Malik informed us that Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri informed me that Anas ibn Malik said, so this is extremely short chain transmission, right? Extremely short chain transmission. So Malik narrating from Ibn Shihab. So between Imam Malik and the Prophet ﷺ, there's just two people, right? Why? Because Anas ibn Malik lived for a long time, right? So Zuhri was born in the year something like 50, and Anas passed away in the world like 91. So he had like 40 years of overlap of life, right? That's longer than some of us with our parents, right? Well, most Sahaba are not like that, right? Most Sahaba are not like that. We used to pray Asr, then someone would leave to go to the Masjid of Quba and reach them while the sun was still high. So you go still far away and the sun is still high. i.e. they used to pray Asr early. أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا إسحاق بن عبد الله ابن أبي طلحة عن أنس بن مالك قال كنا نصلي العصر ثم يخرج الإنسان إلى بني عمرو بن عوف فيجدهم يصلون العصر. Same idea. Malik said that Ishaq ibn Abdullah ibn Talha informed us that Anas ibn Malik said, we used to pray Asr, and then someone would go out to Banu Amr ibn Auf and find them still praying Asr. قال محمد تأخير العصر أفضل عندنا. Notice the plural, right? He says delaying Asr is better in our eyes. من تعجيلها إذا صليتها والشمس بيضاء نقية لم تدخلها صفرة. So praying Asr later is better. So what did Imam Muhammad just change his opinions based on his teachers? Like he blindly followed Imam Abu Hanifa, then he blindly followed Imam Malik? No. He's looking at the evidence and he's weighing up the evidence based on a certain system and he's saying, no, praying Asr is better in our view than praying it sooner, provided you pray it while the sun is white and pure before any yellowness enters into it, right? So they're going to have the Hanafis just like the others are going to say praying Asr very late is very bad. We're not talking about that. What we're talking about is, how exactly early do we do it? That is the import of the majority of narrations, and it's also the verdict of Abu Hanifa. Indeed, some of the fuqaha have said it is called Asr for no other reason than it is being squeezed, tu'asar, and delayed. Right? Asr means that short time at the end of the day. Right? Well, Asr means I swear by how little time there is left. I'm sorry, I have two lights on. I don't know why it's so dark. And he says, باب الابتداء الوضوء. أخبرنا مالك.
Sorry.
Go ahead, sorry.
What about in the Shafi? I mean, it's not better to delay, right?
For us, it's better to pray it as soon as possible. So for us, delaying it
But
till the Hanafi
mhm.
time is makruh.
And when he said that is the import of the majority of narrations, what does he mean by that?
But he's saying that there's a whole group of fatwa from Ashab and Tabi'een, and perhaps even Hadith, that suggest that. And so again, when you were
Okay.
I'm looking at a Hadith, or one quote here, one quote there, and I'm surprised, like, how did you even say that? It's important to understand that there is lots of evidence from the Sahaba and Tabi'een contrary to what I'm saying. And
Mhm.
so for them, say this is much stronger.
But for Shafis, it's makruh.
It's makruh, yeah. Is it makruh? 1 second. So delaying it till that last period is certainly very makruh. Delaying it till too short a length is you've missed waqt al-fadila, you've missed the best time. I can't remember
Okay.
right now off the top of my head, is it makruh or not? But it's wrong, right?
Okay.
There's a hadith, it doesn't mention it here. Where is the Muwatta itself? It's in the Muwatta that says whoever misses Asr, it is as if he has lost all his property and all of his family. You lost everything, and you're just there by yourself. And so Ibn Habib, one of the early Malikis, he said that means praying Asr late, right? Missing Asr doesn't mean missing Asr, it means praying it late. Like if you pray Asr late, it's almost as if you just lost everything apart from your own life. Like all you have is your own life. That's it. You've lost your family, you lost everybody in your family, you lost all your property, you have nothing left. So anyway, and basically, unless there's some particular reason, for example, praying within the Jama'ah, we should pray Asr early. Um, okay, so it says أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا عمرو بن يحيى بن عمارة. Give me 1 second, close the window. Um, أخبر عمرو يحيى بن عمارة بن أبي الحسن المازني عن أبيه يحيى أنه سمع جده أبا حسن يسأل عبد الله بن زيد بن عاصم، كان من أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم، قال هل تستطيع أن تريني كيف كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يتوضأ؟ قال عبد الله بن زيد نعم، فدعا بوضوء فأفرغ على يديه فغسل يديه مرتين، ثم مضمض ثم غسل وجهه ثلاثا، ثم غسل يديه إلى المرفقين مرتين، ثم مسح من مقدمة رأسه حتى ذهب بهما إلى قفاه، ثم ردهما إلى المكان الذي بدأ منه، ثم غسل رجليه. Malik informed us that Amr ibn Yahya ibn Umara ibn Abi Hassan al-Mazini informed us from his father Yahya that he heard his grandfather Abu Hassan ask Abdullah ibn Zayd ibn Asim, one of the companions of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, saying, "Could you show me how the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to make wudu?" And Abdullah ibn Zayd said, "Yes," and he called for water, wudu. Then he poured some onto his hands and washed them twice. Then he rinsed his mouth, and then he washed his face 3 times. And then he washed his arms up to his elbows twice. Then using his hands, he wiped his head from the front down to the back of his neck, then re-wiped it by bringing them back to the place he'd started from. Then he washed his feet. And so here we notice, for example, something strange to us. So why would he wash his hands twice? Right? And it also doesn't say how many times he washed his feet. It doesn't say وَغَسَلَ ثُمَّ غَسَلَ رِجْلَيْهِ ثَلَاثًا. So it's a bit strange. But again, that's why when we're dealing with hadith, you have to put the hadith together, get a whole picture. And so we agree, for example, that you should wash your hands 3 times, etc. Right? So the debate is, what about the head? Should you wipe the head 3 times or should you wipe it once? Right? The Shafi say 3 times, the others say no, it's just once. قال محمد هذا حسن والوضوء ثلاثا ثلاثا أفضل والإثنان يجزيان والواحدة إذا أسبغت تجزئ أيضا وهو قول أبي حنيفة. Right, so he's saying that Muhammad said this is fine, though 3 times is better, even twice is enough. So is once, so long as it is made to cover all the required areas. This is the verdict of Imam Abu Hanifa, may Allah show him mercy. أخبرنا مالك حدثنا أبو الزناد عن عبد الرحمن الأعرج عن أبي هريرة. It's one of the golden chains here, right? Super strong chain here. قال إذا توضأ أحدكم فليجعل في أنفه ثم ليستنثر. Malik informed us that Abu Zinad narrated to us from Abdul Rahman al-A'raj that Abu Hurairah said, when any of you performs wudu, let him take water into his nose and then blow it out. Right? And so when you say let, the default, or when you say let, is that is an obligation. Lam al-amr yufid al-wujub. Right? The amr yufid al-wujub. The default is it should be obligatory. Right? And so this is obligatory according to some scholars, sunnah according to others. Malik informed us, Az-Zuhri narrated to us from Abu Idris al-Khawlani, from Abu Hurairah, that the Messenger of Allah, skip one. أخبرنا مالك حدثنا الزهري, so this is Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, عن أبي إدريس الخولاني عن أبي هريرة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من توضأ فليستنثر ومن استجمر فليوتر. The Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, whoever performs wudu, let him expel whatever is in his nostrils, and whoever uses stones to remove feces, then let him use an odd number. So this using an odd number is specific, as in the Shafi school. It is sunnah to use an odd number and obligatory to be at least 3. Right, so 3 stones or 3 edges of a stone or 3 pieces of paper, toilet paper, or 3 edges of a toilet paper or something like that. If you're going to wipe and not wash, right? And then it is sunnah in the Shafi school to use an odd number. Imam Abu Hanifa, he says that just means do it properly. Awtara means do properly, like tawatur, right? Tawatur doesn't mean in odd numbers. Tawatur means in lots of numbers, right?
So there are two meanings for that word.
Yeah,
One is odd, one is
many.
many. Okay.
But there's another version where it mentions 3. قال محمد وبهذا نأخذ ينبغي للمتوضئ أن يتمضمض ويستنثر وينبغي له أيضا أن يستجمر لاستجمار الاستنجاء وهو قول أبي حنيفة. So Imam Muhammad said, we adhere to this. Whoever is performing wudu ought to rinse his mouth and expel whatever. So notice the way he's saying ينبغي, he should do it. It's not actually obligatory. And he ought also use stones, okay, which is actually sunnah in the Hanafi school, not obligatory, with conditions. So the default then is somebody who has a small amount of filth in them, they're not obliged to remove it. And that is a verdict of Imam Abu Hanifa. So notice the fiqh is not really here. There's not really a fiqh book proper. So you can't really read this as a fiqh book because it doesn't really give you the details. أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا نعيم ابن عبد الله المجمر أنه سمع أبا هريرة يقول من توضأ فأحسن وضوءه ثم خرج عاملا إلى الصلاة فهو في صلاة ما كان يعمد وأنه يكتب له بإحدى خطوتيه حسنة وتمحى عنه بالأخرى سيئة فإن سمع أحدكم الإقامة فلا يسعى فإن أعذركم أجرا أبعدكم دارا قالوا لما يا أبا هريرة قال من أجل كثرة الخطى. So Malik informed us saying that Nu'aym ibn Abdullah al-Mujmir informed us that he heard Abu Hurairah saying, whoever performs wudu as best as he can, then sets out for the prayer, is in prayer as long as he has set out for that purpose. A good deed is written for every step that he takes, and a bad deed is erased for every other. So if you hear when you hear the iqama, let him not hurry. For the greatest of you in reward is the one whose home is the farthest away. They said, why, O Abu Hurairah? He said, because of the great number of steps. Right, so don't be in a rush to get there. Now, this hadith is interesting, number one, because it tells us about how to do things. We shouldn't be rushing around, and we should make wudu properly. And we know that wudu is not just a thing that we do, but rather it's a ritual. It should be spiritual. We should feel the spiritual vibes of it. And we should know that then after that, we're also in prayer mode on the way from the masjid and the way from the house to the masjid, etc. Right? Now, what's interesting about this hadith is this hadith, all of this content also exists as a hadith, as the words of the Prophet ﷺ. So how is it that we see it here as the words of Abu Hurairah? So there's two possibilities. One, Abu Hurairah said it, and the Prophet ﷺ didn't say it. Okay, and those who ascribe it to the Prophet ﷺ did so as a mistake. Okay, so they're actually the words of Abu Hurairah, and somebody else accidentally took that chain of transmission, took the hadith, and accidentally quoted the Prophet ﷺ, said Abu Hurairah said that the Prophet ﷺ said. Okay, that's one possibility. The other possibility is that the Prophet ﷺ said these words, okay, and Abu Hurairah quoted them, and sometimes he quoted them as the words of the Prophet ﷺ, sometimes he just said it was true, right? So if I say, for example, in Jannah, there will be this reward, and I say the Prophet ﷺ said, in Jannah, there will be this reward, it's the same. Right? So sometimes I'm going to quote the Prophet, sometimes I'm not. And now you who heard me or heard somebody else, somebody quoting somebody who heard somebody else quoting somebody who has quoting me, sometimes sees this hadith as the words of the Prophet, sometimes not. And so to be careful, they just say Abu Hurairah said. And this is what we see very frequently in the Muwatta of Imam Malik, is that when there's two versions of the hadith, one of them is mawquf and the other one is marfu'. One of them is quoting the Sahabi, the other one's quoting the Prophet ﷺ. He just quoted as the words of the Sahabi because it's more precautious, right? And it's more precautious and it carries the same weight, essentially, because obviously he could only have heard this from the Prophet ﷺ. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu does not know the reward you get for walking to the masjid, or the fact that one is this and one is that. He doesn't know these things by himself. So this is very important. So if this is kind of the common hadith science, what do you do when one person narrates the hadith as the words of the Prophet and the other one narrates it as the words of the Prophet, as a Sahabi, right? And also, how does Imam Malik himself work? Imam Malik is extremely careful. So any hadith in the Muwatta of Imam Malik, you can say it's reliable, right? Because he's extremely careful. And the Medinas in general are very careful. And many of the things that happened to hadith that created the need for the hadith science didn't really happen in Medina anyway. Right? People making up stuff, people quoting people with gaps in the chain, etc., is less in Medina than elsewhere. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly show that to you where this hadith is found. Right. So here, this is Ibn Abd al-Barr. Ibn Abd al-Barr is an um, Andalusian Maliki Hadith scholar, and he mentions this hadith that we just saw. Okay. So okay, and it says وهذا الحديث موقوف في الموطأ لم يتجاوزه به أبا هريرة. In the Muwatta, irrespective of narration, Imam Malik always quotes it. Whoever's studying it with Imam Malik always quotes it as Abu Hurairah. ولم يختلف على مالك في ذلك. ومعناه, it says, however, its meaning يتصل ويستند إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من طرق صحيح من غير حديث نعيم. Right? So, for example, there's other chains that are all authentic. And he gives an example here. He says, حدثنا, my teacher, Abdullah Muhammad, he said that Muhammad ibn Bakr said that Abu Dawood, the famous Abu Dawood, right? So this author is in Spain, and he has two people between himself and Abu Dawood as-Sijistani, the great hadith scholar, who narrated from Musaddad, narrated from Abu Muawiyah, from A'mash, who is in Kufa, from Abi Salih, from Abu Hurairah, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu said, etc. And it says, وذلك أن أحدهم إذا توضأ فأحسن وضوءه وأتى المسجد لا يريد صلاته, etc. The whole thing is there. Right? The whole thing is there. Okay? And there's another chain for the same hadith as well that mentions the same thing. So when he mentions here, وقال روى عبد الرزاق الصنعاني, and others from Thawri, Sufyan al-Thawri, from Ibrahim Muslim, from Abu Ahwas, these are Kufans, from Abdul Mas'ud in Kufa. قال ما من رجل يتطهر, so the same thing is quoted here from Abdullah Mas'ud.
So this shows that it is most likely
Yeah, it's
from the
the words of
Prophet.
the Prophet ﷺ, that's what it is. So it's not Abu
Yes.
Hurairah mentioning something from himself. But so why is it that Imam Malik is so careful? Because that's how he is in hadith. He says there's 0.001% possibility that it's just the words of Abu Hurairah. I'll just leave it like that. Even though it is clearly the words of the Prophet ﷺ. Here, this is, where else is this hadith? So this is in Bukhari and Muslim, I believe. صلاة الرجل في جماعة تضعف and it says ذلك أنه, it starts from here. إذا توضأ فأحسن وضوء ثم خرج صلاته لا يأخذ إلا صلاة, etc. So لا يخرج, so ثم يخرج إلى مسجد لا يخرج إلا لصلاة. This is the same as يعمد, right? So you have to understand that hadith is not verbatim, right? It's not like that anyway. Now, a new sentence and new something else, that's something else. But the point is saying خرج or عمد or عمد يعمد is the same thing. Okay, so we learned something about Imam Malik, that Imam Malik is super careful. If it's there, it's reliable. It's not going to be there if it's not reliable. I'll close this. Okay,
It says, can I ask a question?
go ahead, Bismillah.
Okay, so some of the hadith start with أخبرنا مالك, some of them start with Qala Muhammad. So
Qala Muhammad, this
uh,
means Imam Muhammad is speaking now. So this is his commentary.
yeah, but if you like, for example, the very first hadith, and then
Yeah, that's because he's
that's
starting
not
the whole
before.
thing. Qala Muhammad. But usually when he says akhbarana, informed us, Malik. So who's us? The us is Imam Muhammad, right? And so you'll find in the other version of the Muwatta, the most famous Muwatta, it will say,
Yeah,
um, it will say, حدثني عن Malik. He'll say, he narrates to me from Malik. So who is me and who is he? Right, that's how the book is. It will say like, he narrates to me from Malik. Like, well, who's talking then? So this is in Spain, you have Ubaidullah ibn Yahya al-Laythi, who is narrating from his father, Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi, who was in Spain and went to study with Imam Malik in Medina. So that's how the book is structured. So you don't even know the name of. So in the book, it doesn't even say that. I mean, it will. When you narrate it to somebody, you'll have your chain going back to that, and you'll see it eventually. But otherwise, the text it doesn't even say that. It just says he told me from Malik. So who's he and who's me, right? And it's Yahya ibn. So Ubaidullah ibn Yahya al-Laythi, narrating from his father Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi. Okay. And Imam Bukhari will do the same thing. Imam Bukhari will say, وحدثنا عبد الله بن قعنبة or Al-Qa'nabi عن Malik. So Imam Malik will write the same Imam Bukhari will write the same hadith that you're going to find here or in the narration of Yahya ibn Yahya Laythi with his own chain. Because in reality, what happened is there's so many people narrating the same hadith from Imam Malik that it's just widespread. Okay. It says Bab غسل اليدين في الوضوء, washing the hands when performing wudu. It says أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا أبو الزناد عن الأعرج عن أبي هريرة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا استيقظ أحدكم من نومه فليغسل يده قبل أن يدخلها في وضوئه فإن أحدكم لا يدري أين باتت يده. Sorry. It says Malik informed us, saying Abu Zinad informed us from A'raj, from Abu Huraira, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when one of you wake up, when any of you wake up, let him wash his hands before he inserts it into his wudu bowl, for he has no idea where his hand spent the night. So there's different understandings of this hadith. Imam Shafi'i, he says it's because it's hot and people would do istinja with stones or something like that. And so they would have najasa on them, and so they would sweat, and then their hands might touch their private parts, and then they get filthy, right? Ibn Habib of the early Malikis, he said it means people who have intercourse and then go to sleep without making ghusl. So if you do that, you go to sleep without making ghusl, then you don't know where your hand spent the night, right? So the point is, they agree that it's the possibility of tanjis, right? Possibility of making something filthy, right? So this is a proof against the Hanafis, against the Malikis, that a small amount of water can become filthy by mere contact with filth, even if there's no change, right? So the Malikis, they say water cannot become filthy unless it changes. So if you had, for example, urine on your finger and it dried, then you put your finger in a cup of water and you couldn't see anything in the cup of water, it doesn't affect the cup of water. According to the Jumhur, right? We say, well, look, Prophet said, don't put your hand in the bowl because you might make it filthy because you don't know what's on it, right? That means if you did know what was on it, it would make it filthy. So we say a small amount of water becomes filthy even if there's no change. And they say it has to be changed for something to become filthy. Muhammad said this is good and this is what he ought to do, though it is not one of the compulsory matters, which if someone leaves it, he will have done a wrong action. This is the verdict of Abu Hanifa May Allah have mercy upon him. Why? Because al-asl is a tahara, right? The default is your hands are pure until proven otherwise. So, right, it's going to be fine. So similarly, the Shafis, they say, well, what if you had a camera on of your hands, right? So the point is, it's makruh to put your hand in a small amount of water unless you are certain that your hands are pure. Okay, what if you are certain your hands are pure? Like you had somebody watch you the whole time. Okay, then it's not makruh. So أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا يحيى بن محمد بن طحلاء عن عثمان بن عبد الرحمن أن أباه أخبره أنه سمع عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه يتوضأ وضوء وضوءا لما تحت إزاره. So he said, Malik informed us, saying that Yahya ibn Muhammad ibn Tahla informed us from Uthman ibn Abdul Rahman that his father told him that he heard Umar ibn Khattab washing that which is below the large cloth wrapped around the lower half of the body, i.e., he went to the bathroom and he heard him washing himself. قال محمد وبهذا نأخذ والاستنجاء بالماء أحب إلينا من غيره وهو قول أبي حنيفة رحمه الله. Muhammad said, we adhere to this. Cleaning yourself with water is preferable to us than doing otherwise. And this is the verdict of Abu Hanifa, may Allah show him mercy. Right? So it is sunnah to clean yourself with water, but you do not have to clean yourself with water. And I'm not sure exactly what the Maliki school is on this. Perhaps in some conditions, but in the Shafi school and the Hanafi school, it is sunnah to use water, but not obligatory. And if you can use toilet paper as long as you fulfill the conditions. So it says, Babul wudu'i min masjid dhakar. He says, performing wudu after touching the male private parts. أخبرنا.
I have a question.
Yes.
So here he's using the word yatawadda'u, so it means yaghsilu,
It means
not
yaghsil. So
the
this is very important.
wudu. Okay.
Exactly. So wudu, you have to understand that there are language. We have to stop here, inshallah, but there's language that they will use. There's language that they will use that for us has a certain term. Wudu means something for us. It's a term. For them, it just meant washing. So we have to be very careful. Are they using the linguistic language? The word that what it means in that? What does it mean? The term that we're using. Later on, we're going to see that it's wajib to make wudu, to make ghusl on Jum'ah. Wajib. The word wajib is going to be used. But what does wajib mean? Does wajib mean what we mean by it or what they meant by it? Right? And so it's important to identify that. Nikah, what does nikah mean? Does nikah mean intercourse? Or does nikah mean marriage? Do we refer to marriage as intercourse because that's something that's halal in that situation? Or do we refer to intercourse as marriage because it can only be done if you're married? Like, what is the word? Right? And so it's important. What is the actual word? What do we mean by words? It's very important. Inshallah, next week we'll go on to wudu' min masjid dhakar. And you're going to see here the whole debate. And here, as Muhammad was asking, he says, Qala Muhammad. He doesn't always say, he is quoting hadiths that are not rated by Imam Malik. He's saying, you Medinans hold that touching your private parts breaks your wudu, and you are wrong, and I will show you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? And so this is a good section that represents this whole debate. Inshallah ta'ala. We'll continue inshallah. Subhanallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.
Sheikh